I'm a 21-year-old college student who came home for the summer, and I haven't slept properly in nearly a week. What I'm about to tell you started with something completely innocent. Something that could happen to any of us on any ordinary morning. I have a habit of stopping at this small, family-owned bagel shop near my house. Same order every time, sometimes grabbing extras for my family on the way back. One weekday around 10 in the morning, I walked in and was greeted by a young guy behind the counter, maybe mid-20s. He was friendly, locked eyes with me, and asked what I wanted. I placed my order and reached into my wallet for my card, only to have all my loose coins scatter across the floor. Before I could even react, he had rushed out from behind the counter to help me gather them. That's when I noticed his finger was heavily bandaged. I felt awful and told him not to bother, but he insisted on picking up every last coin. I asked what had happened to his hand. He said he'd dislocated it during a rugby match. We had a brief, completely casual conversation about the sport, how long he'd been playing, where his team practiced. Nothing about it felt strange. I thanked him, paid, and went on my way. That afternoon, I opened Instagram and saw a new follower notification. My stomach dropped the moment I recognized his face. It was the guy from the bagel shop. I couldn't figure out how he'd found me. My account uses my full name, so anyone who knew it could search me, but I'd never told him my name. The only thing I could think of was that he'd glanced at my credit card. I removed him as a follower and tried to forget about it. Less than 30 minutes later, he followed me again. Then came the first message. He said he hoped it wasn't strange that he'd looked me up, and that he hadn't been able to stop thinking about me since I walked in. A chill ran through me that I couldn't shake. It wasn't that he was some stranger online I'm publicly visible because of. My work in music and theater, and I'm used to odd messages. This was different. This man knew what I looked like in person. He worked 10 minutes from my house. And now he was in my phone. I blocked him. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Stay with me, because what happened next, the messages, the parking lot, the handprints on my window, is far worse than anything you're imagining right now. After I blocked him, I assumed it was over. It wasn't. A few days later, during my lunch break at work, I checked my phone and found over 50 notifications, all from a brand new account he had created just to get around the block. He had gone back through every single one of my posts and liked them all. The messages that came with them asked why I had blocked him, called me pretty, and repeated over and over that he only wanted to get to know me. That evening, I went to rehearsal for a theater production I was part of. During our short break, I checked my phone again. The number had climbed past 100. He had found my Snapchat and TikTok, gone back through years of content, and was sending increasingly angry messages across all three platforms, demanding to know why I wasn't responding, complaining that I'd blocked him, mentioning that he'd seen my profile on a dating app and wanted to know why I hadn't matched with him. Then one message stopped me cold. He said I looked good in blue that day. I was wearing blue. I walked out the stage door that night gripping my keys so hard my knuckles were white. I took a few steps into the parking lot and stopped. Something near my car had moved. A shape, a man, was standing close to my driver's side window. I couldn't make out his face. I'm nearsighted and the lot was almost completely dark. But I didn't wait to find out. I turned and ran back inside, locked the stage door behind me, and found the head stage manager, I'll call him Finn. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely explain what was happening. He told me to wait inside while he checked the lot. He came back and said it was clear. Then my phone buzzed. A new message. You looked good in blue tonight. Finn stayed late and walked me to my car. That's when we saw them, two distinct handprints pressed against my driver's side window. I hadn't imagined anything. He had been standing right there, in the dark, waiting. It hit me then how he'd found the theater. I had reposted the cast announcement on my Instagram story days earlier. It included the theater's address. For the rest of the run, Finn walked me to my car every night. I stopped posting my location in real time. I changed my route to work. I warned the theater staff. I stopped going to the bagel shop entirely. That made things worse. His messages turned angry. He noticed I'd stopped coming in. He noticed I was no longer parking where I usually did. He asked where I had gone. And then, one evening, he told me flat out, "I can find you easily." I didn't know what to do. Was this serious enough to involve the police, or was I overreacting? I was terrified he'd show up to one of our performances. On the Saturday matinee, a cast member found me backstage and told me someone had come looking for me and left flowers. For just a second, I thought it might be a friend surprising me. It wasn't. He had walked into the theater lobby, told the new box office staff he was my boyfriend, and asked exactly which door I'd come out of after the show. He had also bought tickets for every remaining performance of the run. The note with the flowers said he was disappointed I hadn't come out to see him. He mentioned he'd noticed I'd stopped coming to the bagel shop and had changed my parking habits, but that he would be patient. He said the roses would look lovely in my bedroom. And that I didn't need the stage manager walking me out anymore, because he would be there if the director called an emergency meeting. The theater banned him and voided all his tickets. I haven't heard from him since. But as I file for a restraining order, I keep thinking about how quickly things escalated from one ordinary morning and a dropped wallet. That story shook me deeply, but the next one takes a different kind of fear. One that unfolds slowly, in the dark, outside a bedroom window. This one takes place in 2018. I grew up in Northern Ireland, in a house on a residential street with a row of small shops directly across the road. At the far end of that row sat a pharmacy, the first thing you see when you turn onto the street. I was driving home around 2 in the morning after a late night at a friend's place. I was exhausted, running on autopilot, just counting the minutes until I could get into bed. As I turned onto my street, I noticed a figure standing in front of the pharmacy. Motionless. I didn't think much of it at first, maybe someone out for a late walk, maybe someone who'd had too much to drink. But as my headlights swept over him, I saw he was dressed entirely in black. He hadn't moved a single inch. Something about it made my skin crawl. I'd heard stories over the years of attempted break-ins at that pharmacy. I slowed down to get a better look. The moment my headlights fully lit him up, he raised both hands and covered his face. He was wearing black leather gloves. And even with his hands covering his face, he slowly turned his head to follow my car as I drove past. In a moment of pure instinct, I pulled into my own driveway. The second I did, I realized my mistake. Now he knew exactly which house was mine. I checked my mirrors. He wasn't standing where he'd been anymore. I ran to my front door, got inside, and locked it. I texted my friends and mentioned what I'd seen. They told me I'd probably just startled him, that he'd moved on, that I was overthinking it. Maybe they were right. Before getting into bed, I cracked my window like I always did. I never slept with it fully closed, and checked through the blinds one last time. The street was empty. I closed the blinds and fell asleep. I don't know how long I was out when something pulled me awake. Not a crash or a shout. Just a feeling. I lay completely still in the dark, listening. Then I heard it. Humming. Very faint, slow and rhythmic, like someone passing time without a care in the world. It was coming from right outside my window. It was 3:30 in the morning. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself it was probably someone on the street. But the window was cracked open, and the sound was close. Too close. I decided I needed to quietly close and lock the window, then call the police. I moved as slowly as I possibly could, barely breathing, hands trembling as I reached for the blinds. The humming stopped. I pulled the blinds back. The man from the pharmacy was standing directly outside my bedroom window. He still had his gloved hands raised over his face, but this time, his fingers were spread just slightly apart. One eye was visible through the gap, staring straight at me. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just stood there, eye locked on mine. And then, slowly, one corner of his mouth curled into a smile beneath his gloves. I screamed and called emergency services, sobbing so hard the operator could barely understand me. The police arrived within minutes. They searched the grounds, the nearby gardens, the alleyways. He was gone. The only thing they found was that the glass panel on the pharmacy door had been smashed. The security shutter had stopped him from getting inside, so he'd given up, but not before letting me know he'd seen which house was mine. The officers suggested he may have been trying to intimidate me after I slowed down and watched him. Whether his visit to my window was a warning, or something more calculated, I'll never know. I still live in that house. I still drive past that pharmacy. And every single time, late at night, I look at that exact spot where he stood. That story ends without an answer. But the final one does get a resolution, and it might be the most unsettling of them all, because the danger had been living right across the hall. Before all of this, I wasn't someone who worried about living alone. I was 19, newly independent, working full-time at a restaurant chain, and genuinely proud of myself for getting my own apartment. It was modest, in a low-cost complex near my job, but for the first several months everything was calm and completely normal. Then I started noticing things. I came home from a shift one evening and immediately felt that something was off, not like someone was present, but like someone had been there. I climbed the stairs to my second-floor apartment and walked into the living room. Across the carpet and leading into the kitchen were a trail of large, muddy boot prints. Man-sized. I searched every room. Nothing was missing. No one was there. I called the leasing office to ask if maintenance had been scheduled. They hadn't. I told my friend who lived in the same complex. He said I was probably just being paranoid. Over the following weeks, it kept happening. A new jug of water that I'd left in the fridge was found open and half empty on the counter. My thermostat was turned all the way up to maximum, something I'd never do since I paid the heating bill myself. Small things. Strange things. Nothing that could prove anything. Every time I brought it up, my friend told me I was forgetting things. He said I was imagining it. And after a while, I started to wonder if maybe he was right. Then I came home late one night and found my door slightly ajar. Not wide open, just cracked, the way it would look if someone had pulled it almost shut but not quite. I knew I had locked it. I have a cat, and he doesn't go outside. There was no way I would have left without checking the lock. I went inside. My cat was there. Nothing appeared to be stolen. But I knew. I started testing it. Every time I left, even for 5 minutes to check the mail or take out the trash, I pressed a small strip of clear tape across the bottom of my door. If it was disturbed when I returned, someone had opened it while I was gone. It was disturbed every single time. I filed police reports. The leasing office refused to let me out of my lease or offer any assistance. I had suspicion but no hard evidence, and nobody believed me. I accepted that this was going to be my life until I could move out. The day it became undeniable, I was home on a day off, finally relaxing. I looked over at my television console. My gaming system and several other electronics were gone. For the first time, I had proof. Something real. Something no one could explain away. The police came. My friend, for the first time, was genuinely shaken and deeply apologetic. He started keeping a closer eye on my place, sometimes lending me his dog to stay with me while I worked. Things settled down enough that I finished out my lease and moved on. For years later, I moved back into the same complex with my now spouse. The price was right, and we figured that between the time that had passed and no longer living alone, things would be different. They were, at first. One afternoon, as I was carrying groceries in from the car, a maintenance worker stopped me. He called me by name. He pointed to my old apartment and asked if I used to live there. I felt every hair on my arms stand up. How did he know my name? How did he know which apartment had been mine? He saw my expression and quickly said the leasing manager had told him. Then he told me something I had been waiting years to hear. A former maintenance worker at the complex had recently been fired and arrested for breaking into the apartments of women who lived there. He believed I was one of his victims. The pieces fell into place all at once. The man had his own master key. And his apartment. His front door faced mine directly. We were maybe 50 feet apart. Every time I stepped outside for even a moment, he could see me. He knew exactly when I left, exactly how long I'd be gone, exactly when to move. Every open door. Every disturbed piece of tape. Every strange thing in my apartment. It had been him, the entire time, from right across the hall. I am grateful every single day that it never became something worse. But I carry it with me still. Trust what you feel. Trust what you notice. And never, ever dismiss your own instincts just because someone else tells you to.